Anytime you're going anywhere, you want to make sure you're prepared, especially if you're going into a dangerous environment. Well, I forgot the can opener. I'm not prepared. But what happens when it's the actual supplies you bring that's your downfall? I'm here at the Alberni Valley Museum, well, in the Franklin exhibit. And this will give you an idea of what can happen when one of your supplies is defective, especially in a harsh environment. Today we have Shelley Harding with us, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Franklin expedition. So Shelley, what was the Franklin expedition? What was it? What were they looking for?
Well, the expedition set sail in 1845. It was under the command of Sir John Franklin, and they planned to be away for 3 years, and what they were looking for was the Northwest Passage. So of course they left from England, and they were approaching it from the east, from the Atlantic side, and they were hoping to find the passage to the Pacific.
But it seems they got lost.
Well, they certainly got to the north. They were landlocked. They got, the ships got frozen in the ice probably that first winter, and things went sideways certainly for them throughout the winter and the next year. They know that some of the survivors some of the crew did survive for a couple of years into 1846, but they had a lot of different issues. They were isolated in the north. They did leave their ships at one point, and food was an issue, and that whole isolation factor.
Okay. Now there have been many expeditions to the north, and some have been successful, some have failed. But what makes this one so special? Why do we have an exhibit on this particular one?
I think it's the mystery of what happened to them. So they know not one of their crew returned. None of them survived. And after the 3-4 years, they were supposed to be gone for 3 years. No word from any of them. 5 years in, they started to send out search parties to find out what happened. This was also the very early days of canned food. They left with provisions for 3 years. Some of the early canning process did have high concentrations of lead in the canning process. There were lots of issues as to what happened. The reason we still remember the Franklin expedition and why we have an exhibit about it is that is that whole mystery. What happened to them? What happened to the ships? It's like they just disappeared off without a trace. And once search parties did go and start looking, they did find some of the sailors and crew that had been buried, some of the people that passed away quite early in the journey, and there are records and diaries that have been found as to why they left the ships and what they were trying to do. They were trying to get south, and the ships eventually sank, and we have this exhibit because we have learned some more information about the crew and the expedition, as well as the very exciting discovery of the ships in 2014 and 2016.
So they were lost for a good century and a half. Probably a little bit longer.
The ships themselves certainly were, and explorations, like very early recovery expeditions in 1848, in the 1850s, certainly did discover some of the remains, talking to the Inuit and trying to find out what happened. There's been lots of expeditions and lots of assistance in trying to piece the story together.
So Kirsten, what's it like to get an exhibit like this?
Oh, it's really fun to get traveling exhibits. They're like a kit. It comes together. This one came in 8 huge crates, and we unpack them and pull out the artifacts and pull out all the set pieces and put it together and make something pretty.
I notice you have quite a bit of stuff here. Some of it looks fairly new, but it must be extra special when you have items like this. Items that were from the original expedition.
This case is full of pieces that they found. These are from the men that escaped the ship, and then these pieces were found. It's always interesting to have the original pieces. So these were pieces used by the Franklin crew, but we also have pieces from the time period of what it was like to explore at that time period, contrasted with some newer pieces of how it is to explore today.
Excellent. It must take a bit to actually get an exhibit like this to come here.
There's lead up to it as it comes together, planning, and it has a schedule as it moves through. As you know, we're one of 2 museums in BC to get it as this exhibit moves across the country.
Like, what do we have here in the case?
These are some interesting artifacts used from the men from the exhibit. You can see there's a boot heel with the nails. They just stick up a little, so they probably grip in the snow. And then just pieces that they would have had on them. There's some buttons and a piece of a pipe, just little bits of detritus that was left.
It sort of kind of tells the personal life of these men a little bit, somebody with a pipe, you could imagine a man sitting there.
Yeah, artifacts really connect us to the people, which is sort of one of the reasons why we have them. The traveling exhibits come in, we have artifacts, and then we have sort of more of the set pieces. So the artifacts are all treated very well. We handle them carefully. They are museum artifacts. And condition reports, they report all the way along its history, so we know what happened at each space along. And the whole thing comes in a kit set together. So case and everything, we put the pieces together.
Now, I take it there must be a bit of planning that goes into where each item is going to be set within the space.
Traveling exhibits, some come with more or less instructions. So we had a lot of leeway of how to put this one together. It came with 3 different sections. There are the artifacts, there's sort of more of the set pieces of the modern things, and then there's this whole series of collages of the explorers that we've put around the walls.
Okay. Well, it must be quite a interesting thing when one of these comes in. And
it's wonderful. Sometimes we know, we have pictures, we know what cases are going to look from, but not always. For example, the grave marker over there, we knew it was coming, and it wasn't until we opened it up that we realized we were going to be looking at a body of a corpse, but that was a little surprise when you opened the case.
Yeah, there's always something different everywhere. In 1845, when the Franklin expedition set out, they didn't realize they were taking their own death warrant with them. The cans of food that they had brought was something relatively new. The cans themselves had been sealed with solder, which is a lead-tin combination. It was conclusively proven in 1992 that the crew did suffer from extreme lead poisoning, with as much as 100 times the normal amount in hair samples. Lead is a very dangerous metal. In extremely small quantities, it can be extremely harmful. Once it gets into your system, there are many symptoms. Anything from elevated blood pressure, kidney failure, eating disorders, not wanting to eat, fatigue. Lead also seeps into the brain very quickly, much faster than most any other metal. And what it does when it hits your brain, it causes memory failure, inability to think logically, and hallucinations. As the lead poisoning became worse, the crew were less able to function normally. This is why we have the crew eventually leaving the ships and beginning what is to be one of the most taboo subjects of our society, cannibalism. Cannibalism has been with us for centuries. During the years of the sailing ships, it was one of those things that the law basically turned a blind eye to. It was left to the sailor's conscience, and many sailors did suffer traumatic effects after such an incident. There are many ships that have been lost. There is a Nottingham Gallery, the French ship Medusa, and the Essex. Some of you may know that ship as being the one that inspired Moby Dick. Members of the crew spent their time in 3 lifeboats, and there are many other ships who, without cannibalism, there would have been no survivors. But up until this time, there had only been one conviction for this crime, and the people convicted, their sentences had been pardoned. The cannibalism in this particular case was compounded between the lead poisoning, the hallucinations of the crew, and their wanting to survive. When the first remains were discovered in the 1800s, Dr. John Ray determined that cannibalism had taken place just by the cuttings on the bones, things of this nature. When the word got back to England, the people of England did not appreciate the idea of good English people cannibalizing each other. Dr. Ray took a lot of criticism for that particular statement. Even Charles Dickens criticized him at the behest of Lady Franklin. But the good doctor was finally exonerated in 1992 when anthropologist Anne Kenslyside proved that the crew had lead poisoning and there had been cannibalism. It's a sad thing that no matter how hard this crew tried, they did perish. So Shelley, there's a bit of a story in regards to finding these ships.
Well, yes, certainly there has been lots of expeditions trying to locate or the hope to find some piece of the ships, if they were still intact or not, just what happened to the ships themselves. And so there's been certainly lots of expeditions. Parks Canada, underwater archaeologists and historians have mounted expeditions, and lo and behold, in the summer of 2014, they found the Erebus near where they thought it should be, and under submerged completely, but intact. And what an incredible discovery for not only for Canada, but for putting some of those pieces together, trying to close the mystery on Franklin and his crew. There it was, fully intact under the water, and then again 2 years later, they found the Terror. It was quite a distance from where the Erebus was, and they found it in a shorter amount of water. It wasn't quite as deep, but also intact, complete with the mast intact, and they haven't been able to bring up a lot of the artifacts or dive back down to the ships very much, because it's such a short window of opportunity in the summertime, and the weather the last few years have been quite bad in the north. So there's only really been 1 or 2 dive days in the last couple of years to go down and get more information.
But that is a great discovery, finding the 2 ships in basically excellent condition. They must present themselves as a time capsule of that era.
Well, they certainly are a testament to, yep, here we are. They still exist. We were up here, and and they are now National Historic Sites for Canada, and they're going to be steward. Their stewards will be the Inuit will be charged with looking after them, and in partnership with England as well. But they are National Historic Sites, and they are protected and preserved now.
Are we allowed to know where the locations are?
I think it's quite, I think we know where they are. We just had a wonderful guest speaker, Robin Woodward, a few weeks ago, who was showing maps with the locations of the two ships, and just how the one, the Terror, was quite some distance away from the other one. And so yes, their locations are known, and but they're hard to get to.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Maybe in a way that's one of the reasons that they're still in such good condition.
I think so. It's an isolated area, and not everyone has the opportunity to make their way up there.
We've had a chance to explore the Franklin exhibit here today, and we've learned quite a bit. You know, we've learned that we have to be prepared for anything that we're going into, especially in a harsh environment. We've seen what happened with these poor people, and it was a tragedy. But as they say, the best laid plans of mice and men. I'm Gerald Labute, your friendly neighborhood time traveler, and I'll see you in time, whenever in time that may be. Me and my new buddy are here down at the Alberni Valley Museum, and we're taking a look at the Franklin exhibit. All sorts of explorers, all sorts of interesting things to see. Don't take my word for it. Check it out yourself.